Well, this is not so much a book review as much as a follow-up about a book. That seems to be kind of the trend lately. I just made a road trip thanks to the members out there and got some interesting footage to share. So I got to make sure my shirt's straight so that the message, I'm promoting the right message. I don't look like a shill. So this is Underwater and Underground Bases by Dr. Richard Sauter. And Dr. Sauter has moved to Ecuador, and you can find his blog. I might link to it in the video description. He has a very interesting blog, a lot of interesting information about the world events and things like that. And he did a lot of writing in the early 90s, some of it for UFO magazine, about underground bases. And that's when late 80s, early 90s was when there started to be a lot of talk of tunnel system across the country and things like that. And in Underwater and Underground Bases, Richard Sauter writes has about plans for a different maglev kind of trains running through the country and puts them in here. And he has a lot of good graphics in here, and he does amazing research into public records. And basically that's what he did, is just when he started hearing rumors of maglev train systems and all, he started researching it and wanted to see what the state of the art was, what kind of technology was out there to do this sort of thing. So I'm going to see if I can find an illustration that, here we go. So this is one conception of a possible maglev train. So he did actually find plans for a maglev train system, tunneling in some cases above ground, in some cases below ground, but he did actually find plans for a maglev train system. And those of you familiar with a lot of UFO lore have probably heard the stories of allegedly a tunnel system connecting secret bases and that sort of thing. And no one has really come forward with anything definitive on that. But a few years ago, I found the hover trains in the Colorado Railroad Museum. And I went up there for spring break in, I think it was 2016, and got some good pictures of them. But I went back again and got some more pictures to share with you, some better resolution pictures. But the interesting thing about these hover trains, these are hover train prototypes that were from the Department of Transportation for different types of maglev trains and trains that used, a couple of these use forced air like a hovercraft to go down a U-shaped guide rail. And I found it really interesting that this program that the Department of Transportation, I think these were actually, these original tests were done like late 70s, early 80s. So that fits the timeline right for a lot of this stuff. And the tricky thing with when you're dealing with black programs, you can sometimes find plans, but finding the actual paper trail for the actual program, that's all going to be totally classified. But sometimes you can get lucky and find some of the paperwork talking about some of these things, or the preliminary work like geological surveys and things like that of seeing is this rock competent for tunneling. So I wanted to show you these hover train prototypes. There's 3 in the train museum in Pueblo, Colorado. So I went up to Pueblo, Colorado, and the funny thing is they're not part of the main train museum. And they actually used to be over at an aircraft museum over by the Pueblo airport. And they've since been moved over to the train museum. And they have little signs out there explaining what they are. 2 of them are bona fide hover trains, but they actually use a forced air system, kind of like a hovercraft. And one of them, I mean, it looks like the one with the 3 jets on the top looks like something out of Buck Rogers or something. And then there's a third that you can't see as well in these pictures. I had to kind of get an overhead view of it that actually uses traditional rails, but then uses some kind of linear motor system to go down those rails. So I found this interesting that that these prototypes were in Pueblo, Colorado. Of course, that's where I believe the Department of Transportation's rail test track is. But also, that is a place where I've heard rumors. Years ago, a friend of mine that was stationed at Fort Carson said that he had heard rumors that there was some kind of underground shuttle that went from Fort Carson somewhere else, and he didn't know where. But he was pretty sure he had seen some of the surface little escape hatches from the tunnel underground had vents and stuff periodically through Fort Carson. And that was about all he was willing to say. As soon as I started asking a lot of questions, he kind of clammed up on that. But anyway, I find this to be an interesting little piece of information because, again, this shows that this was more than just a, you know, casual talk about this maglev program, that they were actually building prototypes. And then the guy who runs the museum there actually talked to me about one of the prototypes, the ROHR train, the ROHR train, the one that looks more like a traditional passenger train, and the one that looks most likely to be used in some kind of underground tunnel. He said that one, after they built the prototype and did the testing and everything, the factory mysteriously burned down and everything was lost. So he said that prototype is the only thing left from that program. So there's a lot of weird little things like that, but I thought you all might get a kick out of that. That's all up there again in Pueblo, Colorado, at the Pueblo, Colorado Railroad Museum. And again, it's not on the main part of the property, so you do have to kind of go over a little bit from the main property to find it. So anyway, there you go, hover train prototypes, and whether or not those are proof of anything, it's hard to say, but I find those to be, again, an interesting piece of the puzzle. And again, big thanks to the members of the channel, those of you who've join the channel as members. That really helps a lot with funding these kinds of trips to go check this stuff out. And anything like this that I can find that I think is worthy to share with you, I'll definitely do so, and hopefully equip you with the ability to go check into this and dig into it some more yourselves. So, and any of the information on underground bases, maglev trains, anything like that, I'm always interested in. If anybody has any tips to go on from there, I would definitely like to hear about it. So thanks for watching.